Good afternoon. We're getting ready to get started. I would like to thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Mix It Up, Spaces, Programs, and Outreach that Engage Teens. I'm Liz Bowie, Content Strategy Manager for Demco, and I'll be moderating today's session. Before we get started, I just wanted to go through some housekeeping details, and then I'll introduce our speakers, and they can start today's presentation. On your screens, you should see a chat box on the right-hand side. If you have a question, would like to respond to one of our presenters' questions, or are having technical difficulties, please use the chat box to communicate with us. If we don't get to your question during the session, we'll be posting questions and answers along with the recorded webcast, presentation slides, and resources after the event. You'll receive an email notification in about a week letting you know when everything is available. There is also specific contact information available for the presenters and myself that you should see on your screen as well. After the session, feel free to email us directly if you have specific questions that we may be able to help you with. We're also using Twitter today, and the hashtag is Demco Ideas. You should be able to see that hashtag on the side of your screen in the chat box. We are monitoring that feed as well for questions and comments. While I'm doing introductions, we're going to pop up a poll question on your screen to help us better understand today's audience. Today our question is, what is the current state of your teen area? You can take a look at the options and let us know. Now on to introductions. As I mentioned, I'm Liz Bowie, Content Strategy Manager for Demco, and I'm moderating today's session. We're all aware that engaging teens is one of the essential goals of most libraries, but it can also be a challenging one. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce three members of the team from the San Francisco Public Library who have tackled that challenge head-on and helped create The Mix, a library space and digital learning lab for ages 13 to 18 that has become one of the most popular spots for teens in their community. Our speakers include Kathy Cormier, manager at The Mix, and Mary Obler and Eric Hannon, both teen services librarians at The Mix. Mary will be joining us for the Q&A portion of the webinar. Kathy oversees services at The Mix, including library collections, programs, and outreach. Kathy and the Mix teen librarians work closely with the staff at the main library and youth services librarians at San Francisco Public Library's 27 branches, as well as with schools and community organizations serving youth throughout San Francisco and the Bay Area. Kathy holds a BA in Politics from the University of California, Santa Cruz, and earned her MLIS at San Jose State University. Our second panelist is Eric Hannon, Teen Services Librarian, who began working in public libraries and youth services when he was 16 years old, and after 25 years, he has yet to look back. Eric has worked in the Peninsula Library System, the Oakland Public Library, and the San Francisco Public Library. In addition to being a teen librarian, Eric is a musician who enjoys working with young people in libraries and aims to bring teens and music together at The Mix. As I mentioned, we'll also be joined by Mary Obler, Teen Services Librarian, who coordinates activities in the Makerspace and helps to oversee the work of the San Francisco Public Library's Board of Advising Youth. Mary started her work with libraries nearly 10 years ago as a neighborhood campaign organizer for the branch Library Improvement Program, helping to raise $14 million to renovate library branches across San Francisco. She spent 2 years at the Los Angeles Public Library as a librarian in residence in the Innovation Leadership Program, focusing on outreach and promotion of library services to the diverse community of LA. So before I turn this over to our presenters, I just wanted to show our poll results. Looks like about a quarter of you don't currently have a dedicated teen space. And the biggest percentage of you are planning to make some small changes to your space, as well as another quarter planning to update in the next 6 to 12 months. So our hope today is that by the end of this session, you'll come away with ideas to implement in your own teen spaces that will help you engage and inspire teens in your community. And with that, we're ready to begin today's session. Kathy, you can get started whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to meet all of you today. I'm Kathy. I'm one of the teen librarians here at The Mix at SFPL, our new teen center here in San Francisco. We've been open since June 18th of 2015. However, there were years and years and years of planning before that to actually get a space for teens. So the title of our presentation is Mix It Up, Spaces, Programs, and Outreach that Engage Teens. And really what we would like to emphasize in this presentation is the history of our project. Every project is obviously very different. How we developed this space, now called the Mix, and what you can do to engage teens, even if you have very low budgets or no budgets. It's really primarily by providing a space and an atmosphere that welcomes teens, however small that is, that you will have more success in engaging teens. And so here we go. So I just thought when I started this, well, how did we make the mix at SFPL? A recipe is always a mix. The cooking time of this is very much to be determined, and it really takes a long time, and every day is different. And we'll just throw it out right there that working with teams is challenging, and it's challenging every single day for us. And I'm sure that all of you experience those challenges, and the joys of working with teens and the successes sometimes can be very small and very minute given a different day. We have days every day where we're just at our wits' end because we just can't believe it. We told you this already. What do you come back to us? And it really all has to do with the fact that teens are a very unique audience, and that you're serving them in the midst of this very incredible and rapid and changing brain development that's happening with them every single day and every single moment. That ultimately teens are very, very impulsive, and the new research on brain development among teens is showing that it is as robust a time in the brain than what happens during early literacy. And those of you who are librarians know the big emphasis that there has been about early literacy and learning in libraries, and now really it's time to call to action more services for teens just for this very reason with this brain research. So just want to read through this, that our ingredients here at the Mix are teens ages 13 to 18 from all demographic groups, providing real, meaningful leadership opportunities for teens, creating a designated library space for teens or the opportunity to create one, or even a time to serve teens if you don't have any of those in a space that you already have. To be truly successful, you need the support of library administration and the fundraising board that supports your services, because serving youth, serving teens is very expensive, as you know. That being said, you can do it if you don't have any money at all, just by being a caring person who's willing to listen. Staffing that includes librarians and youth and workforce development positions whenever possible. And teen librarians as facilitators for connected learning, and we'll touch briefly on that in the resources portion of the presentation. But basically, connected learning, many of you have probably heard of it, that it's just peer-led, interest-driven learning, and really the emphasis on interest-driven, that librarians, we have a really powerful role in providing spaces and resources for teens to learn, and youth, and pretty much everyone of all ages to learn what they want to learn when they want to learn it. And the connected learning piece of it is taking libraries from being places of consuming information to producing information, from consumption to production, and providing the space, the tools, the resources to do that. Developing robust community partnerships and money to pay teen stipends is really a critical thing. Eric likes to say that what we do that's different is we pay teens and we feed them. And we highly recommend this if you have funds, even to do this at a very, very limited level. It's more powerful than you would believe. So our instructions are very loose, which is experiment and try new programs with teens at the table. So really providing those opportunities to give voice, no matter how small, involve teens in all aspects of the design process, from naming to furniture selection, whatever you can do to really engage teens by putting them at the table. That will do more to engage teens than you would have thought possible. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. We make mistakes. I cannot emphasize that we make mistakes every single day, all the time. You have to give yourself permission to make mistakes and try again, and that you all forgive one another and you love each other, and you understand that everyone's best intent is there in trying to do this important, meaningful work with teams, and keep trying. So I'm going to talk briefly about the timeline from conception to completion of our project. It really began prior to 2012. This main library, we're about to celebrate our 20th anniversary here, and we never had a teen center that was part of that initial design. Apparently somebody in the process around the time of opening realized, oh wow, we didn't even think about a teen center. So prior to the creation of the Mix until last year, there was a section of our third floor that was quite small, which was our general collections nonfiction floor, that had a space, really a corner, that was called the Teen Center. And this really was a misnomer. It was not a space. If any of you have ever visited San Francisco or the main library is a very big building that is really a beautiful showcase space that the floors surround an open atrium. So sound really carries, and so teens really did not have an opportunity in that space to be closed off, be themselves. They were constantly shushed. And so we've had a lot of rebuilding to do in this process of building this space because, quite frankly, until last year, we did not effectively serve teens, but we did not have a place where they could really be themselves or open up. So this is just a way to say that really our timeline is longer than that. So in 2012, we received the Institute of Museum and Library Services Learning Labs grant. About 25 libraries and museums around the United States received these grants in part that were funded by the MacArthur Foundation. And our grant was very unique, and all of the grants were different. They were written to serve their communities. Our leadership here at the library saw this grant as an opportunity to finally build the teen center that we did not have, and we really sought out the expertise of community organizations that had more experience serving youth. In our case, that was the Bay Area Video Coalition that has a lot of youth internship programs where teens have voice at the table, as well as the California Academy of Sciences, another organization that has a lot of youth leadership, youth development internship programs, and has a experience as an organization of serving youth at every level, and as well as KQED, which is our public media PBS station. So together, those organizations were at the table to create this space. The other thing that we did was that we decided that some of this funding should be used to have a youth board, and that youth voice, teen voice, would be integral to the design. And so Eric will talk a little bit more about that process of building what we now call, and actually they name themselves the BAY, or the Board of Advising Youth. So concurrent to that process of receiving the grant, one of the deliverables that we said that we would do if we received the grant was to create a space audit of the main library to identify an appropriate space to relocate, expand, and provide a comfortable learning environment for teen users, and develop a new model for teen services and attract new users. So we're in the midst of that developmental model right now as we speak, and we did identify a space which is on our second floor of our main library right when you enter the library and the space. And so we've created this environment that teens have immediate access to when they come to the library, as well as other people who are very curious about our beautiful space that really is inviting and everyone wants to come, which has created some challenges of its own that we're learning how to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So as I mentioned, we recruited for and created a teen design board, now the Board of Advising Youth. This group worked very collaboratively, directly with the project designers and library staff to create the space through a series of design workshops called charrettes. We also hired a teen librarian program manager, that's me, and we increased staffing to support this space. And we're able to be open 5 days a week right now, and we'll talk more about that a little later. Hopefully, we look to expand to 7 days a week with additional librarians next year. And we completed the conceptual design. And then in 2013 and 14, there was constructional design and value engineering. One thing that happened was that the design that was created was more expensive than the budget was allocated for the project. So part of what we had to do was make the case to the Library Commission and the Board of Supervisors to increase the funding necessary to complete the project in order to have the design that was vetted by the teens and by all of us that would be the best design. And so fortunately we were able to do that, and that again created an amazing engagement opportunity for the teens to actually speak for what was important to them at public meetings. So I can't emphasize enough how powerful that was, and something that can be done with teens for free. If you want teens at the table to fight for what you want, that's the way to do it. In 14-15, the final design and construction were completed, and we had our grand opening June of last year. And now today, we're expanding the mix through additional librarians and dedicated programs for teens in our 27 branch libraries. So Eric, I'm going to pass it over to you, and he's going to talk to you about a little bit about more of that timeline, specifically of building the mix in the Bay.
All right, thank you, Kathy. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name's Eric. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bay. As Kathy mentioned, the Bay is the Board of Advising Youth, and they are an integral part of this project. They're the bread and butter. This space is for them. We created it with them, with their work. A small anecdote about working with the Bay. They are a youth advisory board, and it took a lot of work just to name them, and they came up with Board of Advising Youth rather than Youth Advisory Board. It was really important to them to come up with the name. So in our recruitment process for selecting the teens for the project, the library conducted outreach to various high schools and community organizations that serve teens. We wanted to make sure we reached out in as many possible areas in the community to attract a wider range of diversity for the project. We hosted group interviews with teen librarians, community partners, current Bay members. When the current Bay members started to recruit for the newer Bay editions, we had them conduct the interviews. The selection criteria designed to encourage participation by a broad demographic. So this just meant we wanted as many participants in as many areas as possible. Okay, becoming the Bay. So basically when the Bay came on board, one of the first things they did was engaged in a design camp. This got them used to the design thinking and critiquing spaces and whatnot, thinking about the design process and how that will play out throughout the project. Excuse me. So during this time, we recruited, selected all of the Bay youth, which was a lot of work, not only to have the applications, have the interviews, but the hard work was going back and selecting which of these awesome teens were going to be appointed to the youth board. We started with bi-weekly meetings at first, and we found that the weekly meetings were much better. It kept the teens engaged more. We got a lot of work done. 2 weeks, a lot happens between 2 weeks in teens' lives, so it was just better to keep it regular, and attendance improved, productivity improved, so we definitely recommend stay in touch with your teens as often as possible. The teens are great because they could always go and survey their friends in their community, so we had a focus group not only with the teens that we're working with on the board, but also their extended friends and families and peers at school. We had mentor consultancies where we had specific issues that would come up. Let's just say, for instance, we wanted to look at the issue of how age restrictions in our space might play out, and we wanted to think about some conflicts that might come up and be prepared to deal with them when they actually came up. So we had various working groups. The teens would work in communications, for instance, would be one. They would talk about getting the ideas out. Another might be technology, looking at different platforms we could use to communicate with each other and store our products, maybe Google Drive. We had a couple other things we were looking at. A major role for the Bay is outreach at events for teens. So they go out into the community to maybe the Contemporary Jewish Museum where they're hosting their teen night, and our Bay members go and participate and advocate for the library and speak about the project and get other teens really excited about it. That was a big plus, to have teens sell the project rather than the librarians going out to school telling the teens how cool it's going to be. It worked a lot better. We shared online. We shared a lot of our information through Google Docs and various platforms online so we could stay abreast of all the information that comes up constantly on a project like this. We worked very closely with the architects. The Bay had a very good relationship. They really enjoyed the privilege they had to be able to work with architects and actually have a say in what the place will look like and what goes into it. That is really an important foundational part of this whole project, is that the teens said what they wanted. They were here, number one, they said what they wanted, and the library, staff, administration, and city heard them and gave it to them. They participated in charrettes, which I'll talk about in just a second. It's part of the design process. But another very important part about having the teens involved in the library project was making the case to the library commission and other stakeholders. This was really important because having the teens speak for themselves, it's really emotional. I mean, I can speak for myself and for Kathy, who was there, to hear these teens get up in front of library commission members and the public and really speak from the heart about what this project means to them and how important it is. It moved the library commission. It even moved some members in the audience who were not necessarily on board with the project, let's just say, and had a lot to say about it. And even those members were really moved by these amazing teen share-outs at these meetings. So basically, this era moved us from the conceptual design to the actual design. And it was a lot of work, and there's a lot more that went into it, but I think that's a good summary. So what is a charrette? A charrette consists of an intense period of design activity. It may refer to any session in which a group of designers drafts a solution to a design problem. So for instance, you can see one of the pictures. There's spaghetti pasta, pretzels, and marshmallows. So a small example of a charrette would be to design a structure that contains all these elements that can stand up and not fall over. So that's what they're doing in the photo on the right. More related to the project, they came up with charrette exercises for designing the look of the place, the furniture, all different kinds of elements just kind of get thrown into the pot, which the teens say these are the most important. The architect took those most important components out and then put them into the design, which then came back to the teens for approval. So it was a really cool way to get a lot of ideas out there and into the cooking pot. Here's some more activities. These were visual thinking outcomes. So the architect said, for instance, think about the lounge and meeting area. Think of an awesome place you've been or you'd like to go. What were the things in that area that were really special and stuck out to you? So we did this for different areas in the mix. We had magazines, and they cut pictures up, took them off the internet from all different kinds of places, scribbled notes on them, and they actually directed a lot of the work that the architects then took in their physical design to try to create these vibes the teens said were really, really cool and teen-friendly. Branding, logo, and web design. So this was 2013 and 14. We knew we needed a name for this place, and this was a challenge to come up with a name. As anyone who works in any group knows, half the group feels one way, the other half feels another way. It's hard to come to a consensus. So we had a few names, threw them around. We realized we need some help. We need professionals, since this is a project of this caliber deserved professional branding and marketing. As good as we think we are here in the library, we think it was better left to the professionals. So we hired a branding expert who helped us, again, generate ideas and communication exercises with the teens so they could come up with words, they could come up with pictures of different things that they associated with it. And again, they threw a lot of things into the pot, a lot of work went into it, a lot of back and forth. The branding experts came back with the mix at SFPL, which the teens loved immediately, and many different variations on the logo you see on the right-hand side of your screen, which the teens immediately loved. I mean, just right away, it was just right on it. They just were behind it immediately. They saw sample pictures with teens with T-shirts on it, and they just freaked out. They wanted those T-shirts right away. So also web design. We unleashed a new website at the same time we opened the Mix, and it was really important because our old website had outgrown its usefulness as far as teens. Our new website, please check it out at SFPL, excuse me, the Mix at sfpl.org. It's very, very exciting. Lots of photos, lots of music, lots of videos, lots of pictures of teens. It's easy to find things. You can find almost anything within 3 clicks. So please check it out. It was important for us to have a good website where you can find the information about the events and see the spaces and see the people that work there. So through October of 2014 through June 2015 was the actual construction. I was surprised that it went by so quickly. They are good. They kicked it out. You can see in the photo on the left, the walls are gutted, the electrical components are hanging out of the ceiling. On the picture on the right, fast forward a month or two, and the sheetrock is up. Everything's ready to go. Things were on time and done very well. I'm going to pass it back off to Kathy. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. So I'm just going to talk about, so this is you are at the front entrance of the Mix, and because you are librarians and educators that work with teens, you are allowed to come in the space even though you're not a teen. So just to let you know about that, we're really trying hard to make this a space that is teen mostly. We're really lucky to have hours that support that so that we can use a lot of our off hours or special times as times when we can allow people who aren't teens into the space, or we have various times, for example, when adults can come in and we give them an actual tour of the space, because we do find there are a lot of adults really curious, and also we find that there are a lot of people who want some of these services that we have for other ages, and we say, well, we hope that we can get there in the future, but right now this is a space for teens. So I'm going to walk you around the different spaces. And this is great. I just want to emphasize that during that design process, this really came out of the design process. And some of our teams actually had an opportunity during that design process, the Board of Advising Youth members, to visit other libraries that created spaces like this. The one that inspired us the most during the design process was U Media Chicago. So 2 of our teams had an opportunity to travel to the Digital Media Learning Conference, where they presented on a panel with other people who were part of our Learning Labs grant. And during that process, they visited U Media Chicago, and one of their comments was, this space is so loud. We really it's important to have spaces that you can be loud in, but also spaces where you can be quiet in. And so the design really reflects that desire from the teens that came out of the design process to have different kinds of spaces. And as you saw on those whiteboards back there, that the collage boards, that lounge, read, study, that they wanted these specific areas to the extent possible. And through that design process, the teams had opportunities to visit co-working spaces, offices, other kind of spaces, so that they could develop the elements that just were the best ingredients for the Mix. So I'm going to take you through, starting at the front door here. So here's the entrance area and the welcome area. So when you first come into those beautiful glass doors, you see this welcome desk here, where either a librarian or a library technician are seated to welcome teens into the space, and also redirect adults who want to come into the space. And we tell them that this is a space for teens. However, you're welcome to go to the other areas of the library. And these are some of our, on the right hand of the slide, you see some of our Board of Advising Youth members. We really see this as a production space, and one of the recent collaborations we've had has been with an informal educator who has been doing different kinds of challenges. And so she did this project called the Resilience Challenge, and she's also applying for one of the Super Schools grants. And so she was using the Board of Advising Youth members to help brainstorm the future of high school. So they were there with Post-its to talk about what they have crazy ideas. On the left, you can see there's more crazy ideas than any other idea, and what should stay, what should go, what they really, things to get rid of. And there was a lot of things to get rid of were early start times, homework, meaningless homework. It was very interesting. And what they really wanted to add were a lot of the elements that we have in the Mix. So we're really excited to take those crazy ideas and really use that as an outreach opportunity to figure out how we can get teens to the table. And it's really not me, like Eric said before, it's not me, it's not Eric, it's not Mary who do this. We really are activating the Board of Advising Youth and the other teens who are in the space to activate for the space as a way of engagement. So we have some amazing equipment here in this space, and part of that was because the Friends of the Library, the way it works here in San Francisco or even in California is that the public money that is spent on libraries to support libraries supports building of the building and the building of the resources and the paying of staff, but doesn't provide any kind of money for equipment. And so in Mary's introduction, you heard that she did a lot of work for the Banch Library Improvement Program before she became a librarian, and that was a multi-year capital project that renovated all of our library branches here in San Francisco or built new branches where others didn't exist. So coming into this project, the library had a lot of experience building these new projects, which was really, really lucky for us because we really got the best of that experience in this design process and having the opportunity to have teams at the table through the process. And one of the things that, and so going back to what I was just saying, that fundraising, the Friends had already done fundraising to get furniture for the branches, but they were able to secure a grant for us that also allowed us to purchase the amazing equipment we have here. And you see an example of the amazing equipment. It is quite expensive, but that being said, this organization, T1 Visions, I highly recommend if you have an opportunity to do a renovation, that this is a great bang for your buck project. What it is it's one panel in a wall that completely transparent. So right now, for example, it's not turned on and it just looks like glass that you can see through. But when it is turned on, it's controlled by a Mac Mini that's in a equipment rack, and there's a projector. You can see that on the right-hand screen outside here that projects in, and then this is a touch screen that allows teens to draw on it like a smart board, but it also has access to the internet. So it's really powerful what you can do, in particular what teens can do themselves. They learn all this equipment so quickly, but this is amazing. They can call up, for example, YouTube videos or speakers there. They can play them. They can draw arrows to them and point to them. It is so incredibly powerful as a collaborative tool, and it's designed, a lot of times offices will have these kinds of tools. Sometimes you'll see them in stores, but if you can invest in this, I think that it's such an amazing tool. I know not everyone will be able to do that, but just think of the ways maybe that if you have a smart board, that ways that you could use that smart board to engage your teens in ways that you might not have thought of before. And this is one of our youth mentors, Leanne and Carlos, near the entrance area. So they're smiling for the cameras. The carpet garden, that's another area that when you first come in after the entrance area, the carpet garden is the area in the back. And that was Julia, the designer's word for a space that is hangout space, also, as you can see from the slides, performance space, and also like a showcase space. So one of our most popular programs that we have every week in the carpet garden is a collaboration that we have with an organization called Youth Speaks, which is a spoken word poetry organization that gives teens an opportunity to have their voices heard and tell stories that might be difficult yet are important to them, with the collaboration of Caring Mentors. They are a national organization. They do have a website. I can provide that later with some of the resources in the follow-up. But so it's a space where they can do spoken word, but also it's a performance space. Over on that lower right-hand side, you're seeing them doing Just Dance, very, very popular. That's something that's available on gaming platforms, but it's also available on YouTube. You don't even need any kind of special money to do this stuff. You can actually just get YouTube videos up and have teens there just creating that space for them. And as you also see, it's a space for them to lounge, do homework. We have a couple of pillows. We're going to be getting more of those. So it's really a multi-purpose space. Another thing that you see right here is the opportunity with a glass panel to separate this space. So again, listening to that desire by teens to have different types of spaces to do different work, but also a way for us to separate sound when necessary. Or also, we didn't really have a meeting room for many reasons. You know, because it is teens, you want to be really careful and mindful of not having too many private spaces that you can't keep an eye on and see. So we've done what we can to give teens the space that they need to be teens, at the same time making sure that it's a safe space. So we're always kind of mindful of that, and our designer was mindful of that in design as well. So that glass panel allows us more opportunity to have two separate and distinct spaces when needed. So moving on, you kind of saw a little bit in the last slide that you are moving on to this modular seating area and the nip wall. Everything that can be on wheels is on wheels. So these tables, for example, they flip down and you can move them against a wall. The shelving is also on wheels, so that if we decide that we need to move books to different locations or create a bigger space for whatever reason, whatever gathering we might have, we're able to do that. And it really is so powerful to have that flexibility in the space to change it as you need. And so we can provide later any kind of resources you need. If you do want these kinds of flexible shelving or tables, we can provide you sources for that. There's a computer station as you kind of go around the corner of the space, the media creation zone. And also we have this really amazing tool, this laptop computer checkout kiosk. And of course it is a library and we have books, and books are one of the most popular things we have. And I'm sure many of you have seen the research that shows that teens actually like to read tactile physical books still, and we see that every day. We also have a very small maker space, and I want to emphasize that we do have a lot of tools and equipment. Quite frankly, we actually haven't gotten around to using most of it yet. Again, what we're providing here more than anything is an actual space where you can work and create and do things. And one of our most popular programs by far, or one of the most popular things we have, is a relatively low-cost tool, a button maker. One source is Dr. Don's buttons, but there are many, many others. And I just it'll cost you probably to start this about, if you get a basic package with buttons enough to make 2,000 buttons, about $500. It is like the best investment that you can make. I cannot overemphasize just what an easy, incredible program it is for a relatively low investment. Hours of enjoyment, teens learn how to do it very, very quickly. It ends up being an enterprising tool for them in terms of creating what they want to have to say on the messages, and people just love it because it's also a great way to reuse discarded books, so you can so much enjoyment and power. And then one of our 3D printers, and this is one of our former interns, Board of Advising Youth members, Dawson, who, when we first started and none of our staff knew how to use a 3D printer, helped teach us how to use it. And again, that's another thing, is that teens, quite frankly, will know more about the technology. They're digital natives than you will ever know, even if you are a power user and digitally savvy. We're constantly learning from the teens. So that's really another great way to engage teens, is to acknowledge that expertise they have that you don't, as people who are at the forefront of this technology and of just being teens and being smarter, and they're going to tell you that they're smarter than you, and the fact that you're actually going to acknowledge it is such a great boost for them at this very challenging time in their lives. So I'd say that our very most popular program, we are very fortunate to have an audio studio and a video studio that you saw in that slide, or at the forefront in the center of design, and that was intentional of the designer to put those two spaces right in the center of the space as a showcase, but also as a buffer to sound in the other areas. And the audio studio is about as a professional a space as you can get, yet not having it be a professional studio. And in fact, during the design process, that's actually Julia right there, our project designer. She was concerned because the professionals who create these studios said there's no possible way that you can create a studio that's truly soundproof. It won't be that way. It's like, we don't really need it truly soundproof, we just need it soundproofed. And so it's an amazing and incredible space, and our most popular programs by far are this audio studio that is truly a professional grade, or a semi-professional grade studio, but certainly professional enough for most people. And I'm really proud to say that Eric, during our class visits, has now, or just when people visit, you can see on our SoundCloud, check it out, some of the music that has been created in this space, and we provide links for that at the end. It is, the audio studio programs are by far our most popular, and there's a lot of DIY stuff out there that you can do. And even to what we have found, that even though we did invest in some software such as Reason and Pro Tools, GarageBand, for example, is a powerful enough tool to do most of what people want to be able to do, to record themselves, to tell their stories. So again, it's one of those things where providing that space and that minimal investment and that time and that desire to provide teens with what they want is more powerful than the highly capitally funded space like ours, or is just as powerful. And then there's the video studio. So that's actually where Eric and I are right now. We're actually able to present to you from this space that has a green screen, and you can actually see the power of the green screen. This was one of the programs that the Board of Advising Youth created. It was a Valentine's program. It was Eat Chocolate, Watch the Notebook, and Cry. It was a Valentine's Day or anti-Valentine's Day program, depending on your event, and so it was really fun and successful. And so one of the great things, if you have a green screen or access to one, that you can do is you can get a very inexpensive app on an iPad, or probably other software as well, where you can project different kinds of images. So it's a great way to have a photo booth. And there are many, many, many other ways to do it. I mean, even if you just have a Mac with photo booth software, which all of them come with, you can do a lot of these kinds of things without any kind of investment at all. That it's super powerful to create those photo booth kind of opportunities. And that's a great way also, you can use that for outreach. So they can, for example, the teens can be in that space and share information about the space on their own Instagrams, as opposed to any kind of library-sponsored Instagram. Do a hashtag for your space, and that's a really powerful way to get teens. And I'll be honest with you, our biggest challenge is getting teens to get the word out about this space. I think basically you have to have teens bring in other teens and have them live here, and have them buy into the space, that they love it so much that it's their space and that they're bringing their friends. That more than anything, that one-on-one bringing of other teens into the space, or just, and then of course there are those teens, those outliers who love this space too. They find it on their own if you create this welcoming space. But there's no magic bullet, as Mary said to me, to any of this. It's just constant trying and experimentation, which is why in that first slide I said, keep trying. There's new ways all the time, but as much as you can get teens in that recruitment process, that's huge. So we have a lot of collaborations and partnerships. SFUSD, that's our school district. Teen Tech SF, that's an organization that was created by a teen who was part of the Board of Advising Youth. We have new partnerships every day, and I just want to use this opportunity to emphasize that you may not be able to collaborate with the same number of organizations that we have, depending on your community. But that being said, there are think of that like the partnerships that you have. You still have a partnership as being teen librarians, for example, with YALSA or with umedia.org, which is the organization that was created out of the Learning Labs to support any of this work that you might be interested in doing to create your own friendlier teen space or learning lab. And so now because we have had partnerships and we have our space, we have been able to expand our programming and resources. So we have some staff-led drop-in audio, video, and makerspace times. We have partner-led programs. We try to do programming during class visits. And then we have our Board of Advising Youth-led programs. And quite frankly, I think that more than anything, we're really rethinking all of this service that we've done to teens over the years, and we, from this point forward, have it be teen-driven as much as possible. And we even bring that to the fact that you'll probably have, for example, I'm sure those of you who are teen librarians have had well-meaning people in the community who have come to you and have said, we really want to do this program, I really want to work with teens, I think teens would really like this. And you're just like, okay, right, they're going to really like this, I doubt it. But you want to be nice to them, but also you know from your experience what might work with teens, or more really what doesn't work with teens. And so if you can get the teens to be the ones to vet that, you have much more power, and you also have much more chance of it being a successful teen program. So for example, today is our Board of Advising Youth meeting this afternoon. There's an organization that wants to do these film and dance projects in this community neighborhood that's right here near the main library. And sounds interesting to me, but I really want our teens to be able to provide voice to see if it's popular for, if it's something that they might want to do. So really investing in that time that it takes to have that program development happen is a really valuable thing that you can give, a valuable opportunity that you can give your teens to see it, just how much time it takes to create, plan, publicize, and develop a program so that they see for themselves. So for example, that program that we just showed you in that space, that took a long time to develop, and they saw how it was successful and how it could have been more successful. So I know that we're starting to run out of time, so I'll kind of just speed along. We have staffing currently for 5 days a week. We have a very lean staff of our 3 librarians and a part-time technical assistant, 2 pages, our 4 public service aides, and summer workforce development interns as well. And our current hours are afternoon and the evening hours, which allow us to do things like this, to present to you in the mornings, and also group visits. Today alone, we've had actually 2 group visits. We have a community collaborator who's here meeting in our space, as well as students visiting from Tahiti. Just want to emphasize that the youth-driven design is an integral and ongoing process that really we're asking those teens to act as program designers, as assistants for other library programs and outreach events for children and teens. And that's another way that you can engage youth and teens, is by having them be the ones to lead programs for younger kids. That's something that we have our Board of Advising Youth and other workforce development interns do with a lot of success and a lot of great workforce development opportunity for them. Just want to talk for a moment about youth development best practices that you, even if you don't have an amazing center, you can provide safety so that teens feel emotionally secure. You could, by being a teen librarian or youth librarian, you are providing them with supportive relationships, meaningful youth involvement. That's what we've been doing here. They have the opportunity to build their skills through experience, and they're also having an opportunity for community involvement. And so just really, really briefly, just want to talk about some low budget ideas. If you can let teens eat in the library, doing designated times or designated locations, even letting them bring their own, that's a huge, powerful thing you can do. You're going to constantly have to tell them to clean it up. They're going to forget every single time, but just providing those reminders is really important. We do have values in the space that were created through values activity with teens, and so we'll remind them of those, which in their case were collaboration, respect, and open-mindedness. So that really emphasizing to the teens that it's their space, and if they want to have this privilege in this space, that they have to follow the guidelines of what it means to be allowed this privilege to do that. Designating times where teens can gather and not have to be quiet, either during the day or at special programs. So if you can have a dance party, a local band performance, letting teens, again, being part of the program planning. If you can create a youth advisory board, it's a super powerful thing. It gives you that kind of framework. It could start really small. It could be just one teen. Even if you can't pay them, maybe you have a budget for gift cards, maybe you could offer some kind of volunteer or course credit, or even if you can't do any of that, maybe you can write them a recommendation that will help them get a job or get into the school that they're really hoping to go to. Dry erase paint, chalkboard paint, magnet wall, these are some ways, even if you even honestly, just providing scissors and paper, opportunities for them to collage, the button maker, old school games, and again, just remember, teens are great advocates for funding teen programs at public meetings. That Eric, I mean, we have both cried hearing them. We just can't believe the thought that you have been there. You think you've done nothing, and then yet there they are saying how meaningful it is to them to have the space. It is more valuable than any money that you will spend to give them their voice. Oh, okay, wrong way. So I think I'll end here, which is making the case. You know, teens are consumers with choices, and we hear every day what they don't want. And you, as a librarian, are an adult ally, and research has shown that really teens to thrive need these kinds of people in their lives, not just parents and not just teachers. And in particular, underserved teens, because they don't have the access to the enrichment programs that other teens have, that you as a librarian, you have more power than you might imagine just being there to listen to them, because they will open up and talk to you about everything. And that you have this opportunity to share all those library lifelong resources that rival the finest universities. Most teens don't know about it. We're shocked every single day. Our teens don't know about the free programs that we have at our library that are useful for them. And if you can do it, stipends, money, gift cards, food, pizza can really help recruit teens who are not regular library users. And I think that's really important, and is shown in, leave you with one last note before I break for questions. Future of Library Services for and with teens, a call to action. And so I'm ready to turn it back over to you, Liz, for any questions that happen at this point.
Thank you so much, Kathy and Eric. It does look like we have time for a couple questions. The first one, our listeners are wondering, just looking for confirmation that adults are not allowed at all in this area. And I know you touched on this a little bit, but how do you tell people that the space is only for teens, and how effective are your methods?
We have mixed effectiveness. Eric, do you want to chime in? Maybe we'll tag team on this one.
Yeah, so we've tried many different approaches. You know, it's a public space. We're trying to be flexible and accommodate different people's needs. However, this being a teen space designed for teens, we have to be delicate with how we approach it. So, for instance, when people come in the door, the first thing is we need to greet them right away. We need to nip it in the bud and have them have a conversation going immediately. So we greet people if they look like they're older than 20. Actually, we card everybody who comes in, but if they look like they're older than 20, we will say, hey, welcome to the Mix. This is our new teen department. How can we help you today? And hopefully they'll say, I'm just checking the space out, or I'm looking for a book. If they're looking for a book, we can go page it and grab it for them. If they just want to see the space, we're getting pretty good at giving a 45-second descriptive tour while also kind of corralling them towards the exit and asking them to leave. So it's this delicate situation where we want to brag about our awesome space and have these people, these potential adults who come in, tell other teens about it. But unless you're a librarian or a teacher or a community organization member, sorry, you can't hang out in the space.
Right, and to add to that, we have to mitigate some of the concerns that adults may have. Well, wait a minute, this is my taxpayer money and I paid for this space. Creating designated times when adults can access the space. So we have a monthly, on Saturday mornings, adults visit the Mix program where we give a tour about the space, as well as information for people who might be interested in partnering. I will give people all the time my email so that they can email me or call me. So if they want to set up a time, some people can be very, very persistent in this. They say, well, no, I know teens would really love this. And I say, well, that's great. You can present to our Board of Advising Youth. Here's when you can do this. Here's how you can do this. And we're going to do what we can to be more transparent about some of this on our website so that people who are interested can find more ways to do it. It's very nuanced, I'll be honest with you, that we want to allow, we know people are going to be curious about this space, yet at the same time, during our public hours, really being very clear that this is a space for teens. So working also with our main library staff, because there'll be people who try to send people down to us, oh, I heard that you have this space, and so they told me that you should see it, and just really creating clear guidelines so that people understand that in order for this to thrive as a space for teens, that we really have to limit the access to be teen first.
Thank you. Our second question is, Can you define or describe a space audit, and what is the process for doing one?
So I was not here for the very beginning of that process, or rather I was here at the library but not in this position when that happened. So it's my understanding that there were different, so the library knew that they wanted to build this space. They made a commitment when applying for the IMLS grant to build this space. So it's my understanding that at that time, library administration looked at various spaces that could be renovated here in the main library to determine which would be the best fit for this teen center space. And so they looked at various areas that they knew would be easy to, or I shouldn't say easy, could be potentially renovated for this use. And so apparently they looked at and evaluated the different areas under consideration to see which would work the best. Concurrent to this project, the main library developed a new literacy and learning center for all ages, which actually gets back to my last question, which about getting adults to other spaces. Before the mix was built in this space, it was the Human Resources Department and the Project READ, which is an adult literacy program. The adult literacy program is expanded to all ages, so one of the areas that was considered for this space was our 5th floor, where this new literacy and learning center was developed that serves all ages, which is a place where some of this technology exists that we send adults to. But in any event, these different spaces were evaluated to determine which would be the best fit. So I think a space audit looks at, it's my understanding that it looks at the different spaces that might be available and determines which of those are most appropriate for what you're trying to do.
Thanks, Kathy. I think we have time for one more quick question. What kind of stipend do you provide for teens, and how many hours do they have to work to earn that stipend?
Okay, so the stipend we provide is, we're really fortunate that we have some funding to do that. There's a fund that funds workforce development from the city, and so we're able to use that to pay stipends. We do it on an hourly basis, so we have determined an hourly rate that we try to match the current minimum wage to that. And so the Board of Advising Youth members, for example, fill out a timesheet for each meeting that they attend, and then they are paid that stipend monthly. A lot of organizations do it a little bit differently. They will do it, for example, that each week of participation, say you have a youth board, that once they complete that term, they will get a stipend that's a fixed amount. I think in many ways that way is easier. There's a lot less confusion. There are some administrative reasons because of city rules that we have to do the stipend the way that we're doing it. However, I would recommend, if you were starting your own stipend program, to do it so that teens understand that at the end of a term they will be paid a certain stipend, or like if you're thinking that they might want to use the money to like buy holiday gifts for them or their family for something like that, maybe have 2 times where they get the stipend. But if you go to meetings that every week up to this point, at the end of those meetings you will receive a stipend of X amount. So say it were $250, you would receive that stipend once you have attended meetings up to a specified date.
Thank you, Kathy. It looks like we're going to wrap things up now. We would like to thank our entire panel for sharing their insights and ideas about designing a learning environment for teens that draws them in and keeps them coming back for more. We hope that everyone was able to take away a few new ideas to try, and we appreciate all of you sharing your time with us. You will be receiving a survey at the end of the webinar to let us know how we did. Please take a few moments to give us your feedback and thoughts on future webinar topics. A recording of this webcast will be available on the Demco Ideas and Inspiration website by next week. That's ideas.demco.com, so you can review the presentation and share with your colleagues. And next week you'll be receiving an email that will include the presentation slides, a Q&A log that documents and answers the questions that came up today, as well as a resource list. Again, thank you for joining us today. Please consider joining us on April 27th when Tech Crusader Holly Klingler presents Emerging Technology Trends in the Library. Keep watching ideas.demco.com for other new webinars, and you can also find many that are available on demand to watch at your convenience. We hope that you will consider joining us for future events. Again, we are so glad that you joined us and hope you have a wonderful afternoon.